In today's video, I'm going to do a walkthrough of the Math No Calculator section from the October 2019 SAT. I've scored perfectly on back-to-back SAT math sections, and as I go through the Math No Calculator section, I'm going to show you the most efficient way to answer each and every question. So with all that being said, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get started with question number one. Question number one says, what is the solution to the equation 2x plus 3 equals 7? In this case, we're just going to go ahead and subtract 3 from each side so we can start isolating x. 7 minus 3 will leave us with 4, so we're going to have 2x is equal to 4. From there, we just divide each side by 2 to isolate x. 4 over 2 will give us x is equal to 2. So our answer for number 1 will be answer choice C. Moving on to number 2 now. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression above? So in this case, what we want to do is take our first term and we're going to multiply it by x to the power of 3. That's going to actually ultimately give us our answer because we see that that term is different in every answer choice. So 2x to the third power times x to the third power, we're going to go ahead and take our 2. That stays the same because 2 times 1 gives us 2. Then x cubed times x cubed is going to give us x to the 6th. So we're going to have 2x to the 6th power, which we see is only present in answer choice C. So our answer there has to be C for number 2. All right, moving on to number 3 now. We've got the graph of y equals f of x is shown in the xy plane. What is the value of f of 0? F of 0 is our y-intercept, and our y-intercept we see is going to be at -8. So our answer there has to be A for number 3. All right, moving on to number 4. We've got the city transit bus line charges $2 for an adult and $1 for a child to ride one way. During a certain 4-hour shift, a bus driver collected $1,171 from 617 riders. Which of the following systems of equations could be used to determine the number of adult riders A and the number of child riders C during this 4-hour shift? Key thing we need to recognize here is that it's $2 for an adult, $1 for a child. So we're going to have 2A then plus C. And we know that our total that we collected from that 4-hour shift is $1,171. We also know that the number of adults, which is A, plus the number of children was equal to 617. So all we got to do now is find which set of equation matches up with what we just wrote. And we see the only answer choice that does that is going to be answer choice D. So our answer for number 4 will be D. All right, moving on to number 5 now. So we've got 2 triangles, it looks like. It says in the xy plane above, a dilation with center O and scale factor 3 transforms triangle ABC to triangle DEF. Which of the following statements is not true? All right, well, we know that they're going to be similar triangles because all we did was transform it by a factor of 3. So which of the following is not true? Option A says the perimeter of triangle DEF is 3 times the perimeter of triangle ABC. We know that that is going to be true. Option B, the measure of angle E is 3 times the measure of angle B. That will not be true, okay? They're similar triangles, which means that their angle measures are all going to be the same at the corresponding angles, right? So for example, that angle I marked in blue in ABC is going to be the same as the angle I marked in blue on DEF. Angle I marked in orange on DEF is the same as the angle I marked in orange on ABC, and so on. So our answer there is going to be B. Now, if we take a look at C and D, just so that you can learn a little bit more about the situation, we have the length of the line AB is 1/3 the length of DE. We see that that's also going to be true. Answer choice D, angle A is congruent to angle D. We see that that's also true, right? Angle A, which I marked in blue, is congruent, which means the same as angle D. So our answer there is going to be B. You could have stopped as soon as you saw that B was not true. I just wanted to give you a little bit more prep by going through those wrong answer choices to show you why they're wrong. All right, moving on to number D now. All right, so we've got in the xy plane, the y-coordinate of the y-intercept of the graph of the function f is C. Which of the following must be equal to C? Key thing we got to understand here is that with our y-intercept is equal to f of 0. Okay, once you know that, you see your answer is going to be A. Number 6 is pretty simple. Moving on to number 7 now. We've got the length of a rectangular tile is 4 times the width of the tile. If the area of the tile is 144 square inches, what is the width of the tile in inches? All right, so there's a couple ways you can solve this. One way is you can see that the area is going to be 144 square inches. So you can just think, okay, that would be 12 times 12, but I know that my length is 4 times my width, so my width would have to be smaller than 12, and therefore you'd see your answer has to be A. Now, if you didn't see that, or if your answer choices had something like instead of C being 24, C was 8, then here's how you'd go through and you'd solve that. So you've got your area is 144. You know 144 then has to equal your length times your width. You also know that your width, your length is 4 times your width, right? So your width times 4 is going to give you your length. Length is 4 times your width. Now you need to solve for your width, so you would go ahead and plug in the fact that L equals 4W into your equation. You'd have 144 then is equal to 4W times W, which is going to give you 4W squared. 4W squared. From there, you divide each side by 4. 144 divided by 4 is going to end up giving you 30 6. So you'd have 36 then would equal w squared. Now from there, you'd go ahead and take the square root of each side to solve for w. You know that the square root of w squared is going to give you w, and you know square root of 36 is going to give you 6, so your answer there would be A. All right, moving on to number 8. Which of the following is the graph of y minus 5x equals negative 6 in the xy plane? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this in slope-intercept form because it's going to help you be able to graph this out really easily. When you do that, all you got to do is add 5x to each side. You see you're going to have a negative y-intercept, and you're going to have a positive slope. We see A and C both have negative slopes, so they're wrong. We see that options D and option B, they both have that negative y-intercept. So the next thing I'm going to do is check their slopes. We see both their y-intercepts are in the same place, so I'm not going to worry about that. But we see their slopes are different. Another thing, you just got to pay attention to the scale. Anytime you've got a graph, pay very close attention to the scale of the lines. We see that each of these lines in the y direction as well as the x direction represents an increment of 2, not 1, but 2. So we see as we go to the right by 2, we're going up by 10. Okay, so that's a slope of 10 over 2, which we know is equal to a slope of positive 5. Therefore, our answer's got to be B. In answer choice D, we see that our slope does not equal 5x. Therefore, answer's got to be B for number 8. All right, moving on to number 9 now. So we've got the table gives some values of x and the corresponding values of f of x, where f is a linear function. If y equals f of x is graphed in the xy plane, what is the y coordinate of the y-intercept of the graph? Keep in mind your y coordinate is where you have f of 0, so where x is 0. Now we know that this is a linear function because it told us that. So we see that we are increasing our y value, or our f of x, by 6 as we increase our x value by 3. Therefore, our slope is 6 over 3, which we know is equal to 2. Next thing, if we want to get to f of 0, which has x as 0, then we see that we would have to go from negative 1 to 0. When we do that, because our slope is 2, we would have to go from a y value of negative 2 to a y value then of 0. So we see that our y coordinate of our y-intercept of the graph is going to be at 0, so our answer there would be C because f of 0 is equal to 0. All right, moving on now to number 10. So we've got the equation above can be used to estimate the body surface area A in square centimeters of a child with mass m in grams, where 3,000 is less than or equal to m, which is less than or equal to 30,000. That really doesn't matter. Which of the following statements is consistent with the equation? All right, so we're just going to have to run through these, find which one is consistent. So we have option A, for each increase of 1 gram in mass, A increases, A being the area, by approximately 0.3433 square centimeters. What we see if we increased by 1 m, we would increase our area by 0.3433. Therefore, answer A is correct. All right, moving on to number 11. In the xy plane above, points P, Q, R, and T lie in the circle with center O. The degree measures of angles POQ and ROT are each 30 degrees. What is the radian measure of angle QOR? So we can go ahead and mark in our 30 degrees. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we see that we have a semicircle, which I'm going to mark in blue. The number of degrees in a semicircle is 180, so we can go ahead and do 180 minus 30, and then minus that other 30 to solve for the degree angle of QOR. And we see that 180 minus 30 is going to leave us with 120. Okay, so now we've solved for the number of degrees. We just got to convert this to radians now. So we know that we have 120 degrees as QOR. Now we're going to go ahead and put that over the 180 degrees that are in a semicircle, but more importantly, we know 180 degrees is equal to pi radians. Okay, so we got is equal to pi radians. Now, notice how I constructed this with the variable that I need to solve for, which is the radian measure of QOR up top. Okay, and I'll put QOR for what we're trying to solve here. Notice how QOR is in my numerator. I did that because it's going to save me time, because as you can see, 120 over 180, I can simplify that down to 2/3. Then all I got to do is multiply each side by pi. And now I've got 2/3 pi as my answer for the value of QOR. So you see my answer is going to be C. Now if I had put QOR in my denominator of that ratio, I'm going to have to end up taking at least like 2 or 3 more steps, and it's just going to slow me down. So anytime you have a variable you're trying to solve for, put it in your numerator in a ratio like that. Okay, all right, now we got number 12. What value of x satisfies the equation above? All right, in this case, what we need to make sure that we're doing is getting a common denominator. If we're going to add or subtract any sort of fraction, we need to have common denominator. So we've got x squared minus 9. We know that that's going to equal, I'll go ahead and write this out, x squared minus 9 will equal x plus 3 times x minus 3. Okay, and an indicator that that's what you're looking for too is because you have x plus 3 and x minus 3 in your other two denominators. Always look for that. Now that we know that, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and multiply this 2x then by what it's missing in its denominator, which is x minus 3 over x minus 3. Okay, when we do that, we're going to end up with 4x squared out front. And keep in mind, our denominators, once we multiply everything through, we're not going to have to really deal with them. So we're going to have 4x squared then minus 2x times the quantity x minus 3, and that's going to be set equal then to 1, and we see that that's missing x plus 3 in its denominator, so 1 times x plus 3. All right, now from here, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and distribute our negative 2x. We're going to have 4x squared then, and then it's going to be minus 2x squared plus 6x is equal to x plus 3. Now from here, we're going to want to set this equal to 0 so that we can go through and solve for our answer. So we're going to go ahead and subtract x from each side and subtract 3 from each side. When we do that, we're going to end up with a plus 5x here. We're also going to have a minus 3 as our constant, and keep in mind that that's going to be set equal to 0. All right, so from here, we can go ahead and write out our whole new equation, which is going to be 4x squared minus 2x squared, which we know is going to leave us with 2x squared. So we'll have 2x squared then plus 5x minus 3 is equal to 0. All right, so 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 is equal to 0. We can go ahead and factor this out now. Okay, so we're going to have 2x in one of ours, and we're going to have x in the other to get us that 2x squared. Next thing I'm looking at is I've got to get to negative 3 somehow, and I've got to get to that plus 5x somehow. Well, to get to this plus 5x, I know that I'm going to have to end up having my 3 on my right side. And it's got to be a positive 3 too, because that will give me that plus 6x. Then when I subtract 1 from that 2x, right, and I have 2x minus 1, that's going to give me my plus 5x. It's also going to give me that minus 3. Next thing I need to recognize, I know that I can't have 3 or negative 3 be my answer, because if I look at my domain, I see that that would give me 0 in my denominator. I can't have 0 in my denominator. Therefore, I know my solution is going to have to be where 2x minus 1 equals 0, which means all I got to do is add 1 to each side, add 1 to each side. That's going to give me 2x equals 1, so 2x equals 1. From there, I go ahead and divide each side by 2 to solve for x, and I'm going to end up getting x equals 1/2. So 1/2 would be my answer here, and that's going to be answer choice C. All right, so 12 is a fairly long problem to solve, but there's no way to do it really any faster than that. So that's how you solve 12. All right, 13 now. A right circular cone has a volume of 1/3 pi cubic feet and a height of 9 feet. What is the radius in feet of the base of the cone? All right, let's go ahead and write out this problem. So we've got 1/3 pi is our volume. We know our volume is equal to pi r squared times our height times 1/3. So 1/3 pi r squared times our height. All right, well from here, what can we go ahead and cancel? Well, we can go ahead and cancel our pi. So let's go ahead and erase pi, right? We'll go ahead and erase pi from each side. Next thing, we know that our height is 9. So let's go ahead and plug in 9 for our height. When we do that, we can actually go ahead and move our 9 in front on top of this 3, right? It was 1/3, we're multiplying by 9, that's going to give us 9/3. 9/3 is the same thing as 3, so now we've got 3r squared. From here, let's go ahead and divide each side by 3, right? That way we can start isolating r. Well, 1/3 divided by 3 is the same as 1/3 times 1/3. That's going to end up giving us 1/9, which is equal to r squared, okay? Now, keep in mind, once you saw 1/3 times 1/3 equals r squared, from that, you should be able to recognize that the radius is going to equal 1/3. If you didn't, and you went ahead and took it down to here where you have that 1/9 times r cubed, then from there, you know that all you're going to do is square root each side. Square root of 1/9 is going to end up giving you your radius, which is going to be 1/3. Okay, so answer here is going to be 1/3 for our radius. So our answer is A. All right, moving on to number 14 now. Which of the following is equivalent to r to the power of 2/5 times the square root of r, where r is greater than 0? Key thing we want to do here is rewrite the square root of r to give it its exponent. So we're going to have r to the 2/5 times, and let me rewrite that r so it's more clear that that's an exponent, multiplied then by r to the 1/2. Now from here, you have to get that common denominator so you can add these exponents together. Okay, so we'll go ahead and write 1/2 as 5/10, and we'll rewrite 2/5 as 4/10. All we got to do is add those exponents together, and we're going to get r to the power of 9/10. Okay, so our answer here is going to be answer choice D. All right, moving on to question number 15. We've got a scientist tested a group of adults aged 30 to 85. The graph shows quadratic function S, which models their scores on a language test as a function of their age, X, and years. Which of the following could define S? Key thing I want to recognize here. Number one, take a look at your axes. Anytime you've got a graph, pay close attention to that. You see that you're not starting at 0 in either spot. Okay, that's just one thing I want to point out. Always look for that. Next thing I'm going to see is I see that I've got a concave down graph, right? We see this is concave down. It's not opening up, it's opening down. Now, I see I've also got vertex form in all my answer choices. So I see that with an x minus any number squared, I'm going to end up getting some x squared term. Well, I need the coefficient in front of that to be negative in order for it to be concave down. So I can get rid of C and D because they're going to be positive coefficients in front of x squared. So now I'm between A and B. Next thing I'm looking for is my vertex. I see if I zoom in on my graph, and I'll do this so that you can see it really nice and clear, my vertex is where I peak. I see I peak at 55, right? We see that that's the maximum value, right? If I was to draw a line across it, we're only reaching that point one time. Okay, so as we can see then, our vertex occurs where x equals 55. Therefore, since our equations are in vertex form, we find the answer choice with x minus 55 squared, which is answer choice B. So therefore, B will be our correct answer for number 15. All right, moving on to number 16 now. So we're on the free response section. All right, so we've got on a 210-mile trip, Cameron drove at an average speed of 60 miles per hour for the first X hours. He then completed the trip driving at an average speed of 50 miles per hour for the remaining Y hours. If X equals 1, what's the value of Y? All right, well, we know his total distance is 210 miles. I'm going to put units because if you put units and you start canceling units, it's going to get you in a position where you're pretty much guaranteed to have the right answer, because if you have the right units, you have the correct answer. All right, well, we know his 210-mile distance he has to travel is going to equal his speed of 60 miles per hour. Okay, so I'm going to put miles per hour times the amount of time he drove that, which we know X is 1, so 1 hour, so times 1 hour. So we see that cancels. Now he's got 60 miles, plus the amount of time that he was driving 50 miles per hour, so 50 miles per hour times how many hours? Well, we can go ahead and subtract 60 from each side, 60 miles from each side, that is. When we do that, we're going to end up being left with 150 miles. So now we've got 150 miles is equal to 50 miles per hour times a certain number of hours. We see that this is going to have to be 3 hours, okay? So our answer here, when we see H would obviously cancel, giving us miles, right? But our answer then is going to be 3. So answer is 3 for number 16. All right, number 17. In the equation above, what is the value of Z when W is equal to 2? All right, well, we're just going to plug in 2 for W then, obviously. So W squared is the same as 2 squared. That's going to give us 4. 4 times this 2 out in front. That's going to end up giving us 8Z. So I'll go ahead and write that down. We're going to have 8Z. Next thing we've got is minus 3 times W. Plug in 2 for W there. 3 times 2 is going to give us 6. We'll have minus 6 minus 10 equals 2 times Z. All we got to do now is isolate our Z. So we'll go ahead and add 16 to each side, so that way we can get all our constants on one side. And then we'll also subtract 2Z from each side. Okay, now from there, we're going to get 16 is equal to 6Z. Now all we got to do is divide each side by 6 to solve for Z. We see that Z is going to equal 16 over 6, which we could also simplify down to 8/3. Therefore, 8/3 will be our correct answer. So 8 over 3 is our value of Z. All right, moving on to number 18 now. We've got x minus 2 times the square root of x minus 3 is equal to 0. What value of x satisfies the equation above? Well, what we want to do here is we want to get this square root over to our right side so we can square this, this equation a lot easier, right? We're not going to have to deal with squaring this whole thing, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and add 2 times root x to each side. Add 2 times root x to each side. All right, now when we do that, we'll go ahead and square each side from there. So we're going to end up with x minus 3, and we've got to square each side, is equal to 2 times square root of x squared. When we do that, we're going to end up with 4x on our right side, and we're going to end up with x squared minus 6x, and then plus 9 on our left side. From here, we want to set this equal to 0 so that we can solve for what value of x satisfies the equation. In order to set it equal to 0, we're going to subtract 4x from each side. When we do that, we're going to be left with x squared minus 10x plus 9. From here, we can go ahead and factor this pretty easily. We're going to end up with x minus 9 times x minus 1. That's going to give us that plus 9, but also that minus 10x. Now, keep in mind here, we're going to have to plug in our potential answers to find which one is correct, right, to make sure that they work. All right, so we know our potential answers are x equals 9 and x equals 1. So let's go ahead and plug these in for the value of x. So we'll start with 9. So we can go ahead and put in a 9 for x, all right, and then we'll have 9 minus 2 times root 9. We know the square root of 9 is 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and scratch out the square root. I'm going to put times 3. Okay, we know minus 2 times 3. Well, that's going to end up giving us minus 6. So I'll scratch all that out. We'll have minus 6. Okay, is 9 minus 6 minus 3 equal to 0? We see that it is, so our correct answer there would be 9. Now, if you're wondering whether 1 would work here, well, you'd have to go ahead and test it. So let's go ahead and do that just because I want you to understand that you have to check this. Well, you'd have 1 minus 2 times square root of 1. Well, square root of 1 is just 1. So that'd just be 1 minus 2 then, minus 3. 1 minus 2 minus 3 does not equal 0. Okay, that is not true. Therefore, and just so you know that that would end up being 1 minus 2 would give us negative 1, negative 1 minus 3 would give us negative 4. Negative 4 doesn't equal 0, okay? So you see that if you're dealing with a square root, okay, and you have a variable beneath it, you have to go through and you have to check your answer, because if you answered 1, you would be incorrect. Only correct answer here is 9. So pay close attention and understand you have to go check that after you get to your potential solutions. Always go back and check them if you have a variable underneath a square root. All right, number 19 now. If xy is the solution to the system of equations above, what's the value of x? All right, well, in this case, we see we can easily solve for this by adding these two equations together because it's going to get rid of our y, right? And that's an indicator anytime you have a stacked equation, you're always going to want to look to add or subtract to end up isolating the variable you need to solve for. When we do this, we're going to end up getting 2x equals 5. We divide each side by 2 to isolate for x, and we see x is going to equal 5 over 2, so our answer will be 5 over 2. 5 over 2. All right, moving on to number 20 now. In the equation above, k is a constant. If the equation has infinitely many solutions, what is the value of k? In order for there to be infinitely many solutions, we have to have the same equation on our left and right sides. We see our right side is x minus 2. We see we also have x minus 2 on our left side. Therefore, we need 2 times k to just equal 1. Well, in order for 2k to equal 1, we would divide each side by 2 to isolate k. And we see k's got to equal 1/2, so our answer for the value of k is going to be 1 over 2. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, make sure to like and subscribe. In addition to that, if you're looking for private SAT prep, college admissions, consulting, college essay editing, be sure to check out my link in the description of my website. In addition to that, if these videos are helping you out, please consider donating. It helps me to be able to continue to put out these videos for free.